Well, howdy, Fort Bend. William Ferguson here today from the beautiful Seth in Sugar Land, Texas. We are at the beautiful Howdy Fort Bend studio, and I have a special guest for you today. I know I bring a lot of really good guests to you, but you know what? This is our first guest who is a trustee, a board member of Fort Bend ISD. And it's my opinion that board members have a greater effect than most people understand because they affect the future of our community. And I'm so glad to introduce you to Rick Garcia.
Well, hello, Mr. Ferguson. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's
good to
great.
be here.
Great that you're here. And you know what's fun? Lately, Rick, I've had a lot of candidates that have been wanting to be on the show. And that's fine. I know they have their motives, and I'm excited to have them. I want people to know about them. But guys like you and I mean, we're not running for anything. Yeah. And it's so it's really a genuine fun time for us. We get to talk about our experiences. So how's your day going so far?
Day is going great. Excited to be here. I was joking with you, I think, over the weekend about you asked me, and I said, will I be on there before John Welch? And he's coming tomorrow, so I'm happy to have the opportunity to be here before him. But we had a friendly rivalry going when I first got on the board, and one of the things that I did without really doing any research was to bet on a football game,
right?
Which was it was Foster versus Travis, first football game, and Travis lost, and they lost pretty handily. So I had to wear a Lamar consolidated shirt during a board meeting. Well, this last year we did Rich Point and George Ranch, or was it Hightower and George Ranch?
How did it turn out?
Oh, Rich Point won pretty heavily, and so John Welch is now on the other end of it. He had to wear a Fort Bend ISD shirt at a Lamar board meeting, but the shirt that I actually gave him was this big, gaudy, obnoxious tie-dye shirt when I first saw him. We were at an event, and he was like, "I am not wearing that."
Fits him perfectly. Yeah,
I conceded, and I said, "Yeah, here's your Fort Bend ISD shirt."
So. Well, so the people that don't know John Welch, like you and I do, John is a challenge. Let me tell you, and I think you'll agree with that adjective. He is a challenge. He is so much fun, but he is always looking for a laugh. He's very serious. But I will tell you something he said, because I wrote in the text, I said, yeah, Rick is going to be with me Monday morning. I said, we're going to have a lot of fun. And his reply was, Rick's not fun. But he sent me questions, and I didn't even bring my phone. So, John, I'm not asking your questions. I'm not going to put him on the spot like that. He was going to try to give you a hard time. So what I wanted to do today is there are people in your district. I mean, you know, I started doing my own numbers, and I was kind of blown away because I've not looked at the real numbers of your ISD. You guys are 170 square miles. You are the 43rd largest school district in the nation. You have over 80,000 students, over 11,000 staff members. You have 86 schools or more. And so I was kind of blown away, and I bet you a lot of people don't know Rick Garcia.
Probably not. I'm typically pretty low-key, very non-controversial type. I get in and I do what I need to do. I read my material. I get into the board meetings and try to keep it about the kids. And that's, I think, one of the hardest parts about the job is there's sometimes in the board meetings you're not always talking about educational outcomes.
Yes.
You're talking about budget, and you're talking about bond. You're talking about other things that kind of go beyond, and you don't want to lose focus on it. I think, and we've had some trainings in the past where you have folks come in and say, you got to do all those things. Those things are very, very important to running the district, but every meeting should have some component of what are we doing for the kids? How is our special education program looking? How is our discipline figures looking? How is our overall test scores looking? What's the progress, and what's the plan moving forward? So I think a lot of the information items you'll start to see coming up on all of our board meetings from this point forward is there's always going to be some component of about the kids. And then we kind of get into our consent agenda where we just sort of talk about the business and what needs to get approved. And so that's exciting. That's exciting in of itself.
So correct me if I'm wrong. You just made me, I just had a thought that I had not had before prior to your statement. As a board member, your responsibility is to keep this I'm going to use the term machine. This is a huge machine running to educate our children. That is, correct me if I'm wrong, your responsibility to make sure this machine is running smoothly. Regarding education, correct me if I'm wrong, that is the superintendent and the teachers, and you're not the one deciding the education. You're deciding how it all functions, right?
Well, when we do our board goals, we have metrics, and we have, by the end of the year, students will be at this level. And so we don't get into, obviously, the weeds of it. We have 4 educators.
Right.
I was a former educator on the board, so they do have some experience there, but that doesn't always necessarily make us the experts, because a lot of it goes beyond what some of us can do. We hold the superintendent accountable. The superintendent has his team, and then we sort of all work together to try to figure out how we can get from one place to the next. And there is and I printed this up. There's just a number of different powers and duties that the TEA gives the board, and it's everything from adopting a budget to writing policy to affect change, to making sure that academic performance is met at a certain standard, which is set forth by the State Board of Education and the TEA. So we have to make sure that we are at those standards, but also from my perspective and from the team's perspective, we want to go beyond what the minimum requirements are and try to get our kids to excel even beyond that.
And so, to clarify what I'm saying, you are not trying as a board member to determine the best way to do math or the best way to read. Your responsibility is to make sure, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm learning here. Your responsibility is to make sure the school system is working, and then the TEA or others, I'm assuming, establishes how to teach math and reading and things. I don't know.
And that's correct. Now there will be some that may have opinions on this type of math versus phonics and things like that. And sometimes and we look at the data, and if the data is if children aren't reading at a grade level, which is sort of a problem across the board, what are we doing in that space? And that's kind of where we come in. Are these working effectively? Do we need to switch to this strategy? Do we need to look at these methods? Do we need to come up with something new? So those are some of the questions that we as board members get to ask, and we get to work with staff to figure out, are we going this direction or are we going this direction? Is this direction the correct path? So,
wow. So the term reading at a particular level, I don't think most people understand unless you do a study on it, the value of reading. And so if our children are not reading at that expected level, it may be because, and I'm not picking on any parents or students, it may be because they never read. Well, I'm just throwing that out there. That's just one example.
So we read a lot. We read a lot with my kids growing up, and we do struggle with after they're grown. I have a 7th grader and I have an 11th grader. Particularly with my 7th grader, just making sure that he continues to read. So I think that's a challenge with everyone. But now with the dawn of technology and phones, everybody's always reading, but they're not necessarily always reading what they should be reading.
Clip.
Yeah, so reading is very important. And I think it's if you're not reading by the 3rd grade, then the studies show that your success levels drop significantly after 3rd grade if you're not reading. Now, they have tests such as the REN 360 that give teachers and staff and administrators an idea where you're at as far as your reading level. So if you're in 3rd grade and you're reading at a 3rd grade level, that's ideal. There's some that are a little bit behind, and then there's some that are very significantly behind. So that's sort of the focus, is the gaps. Where do we close the gaps? What's working well for the kids that are on level or even above level, and where can we go to close the gaps for the kids?
Sure.
And then there's a component of, are there any issues going on that are preventing them from reading? Like my son was diagnosed with dyslexia in the 2nd grade. My wife's a teacher. I'm a former teacher, so we actually kind of knew that he had dyslexia. We had him tested in the 1st grade. He didn't qualify, but there was a component of what tests they run in 1st grade versus the tests that they run in 2nd grade weren't quite the same. So we had him retested in 2nd grade, and he qualified. And in the back of my head is there's a component of parents they may not know. They just he's just figuring it out, or she's just figuring it out. And so a lot of children, I feel, sometimes get lost in the mix. Or if they did get tested, like in our case, 1st grade, and they say, he doesn't have dyslexia. Oh, okay, good. That makes me feel better. But really, he or she did. And so they get into the system with a learning disability,
Right.
and it goes undetected beyond the first evaluation. So, yeah, that's interesting.
Well, and I need to clarify. I'm not a teacher. I'm not an educator. I'm a police officer, city council member, and I've got a podcast and a small business. So I'm not telling you why your child can't read or you can't read. I'm just telling you the priority should be you need to read more. So I just want to make sure that was clear. That didn't come from you; it came from me. Hey, so I'm excited because I got to meet Mark Smith, your new superintendent.
He's great. Yeah, he's great. He's a breath of fresh air.
Yes.
Excited to have him. I know it was a little bit of an issue getting him here, but he's here, and we're doing some really good things. I'm really happy for him.
I just got to meet him, so he looks like a great guy. I read about his credentials, his experience. He looks like he might be a perfect fit. You guys voted him in unanimously, so welcome aboard, right?
Yeah, he's former superintendent of the year. I think last year, or maybe 2022, which I guess was technically last year. Used to work in the district, I think, back in 2012, so has a little bit of history. He's got some family here, and was doing some great things up in Duncanville, and we're looking forward to some really great things here in Fort Bend, and so far we're doing.
Well, his personality was awesome. I'm so glad. He's such a humble guy, too.
Very much.
He was just super. So as I went through kind of preparing, I came across a lot of what I would call current news. Well, I'm not going to get into current news because current news sometimes isn't really that. It's just people griping. And so I remember when I was an HOA board member, and I was a director in a local HOA, pretty good size, about 4,500 homes. And I remember the headache, oh my goodness, that people would cause being involved in the HOA. And then it dawned on me, it can't be anything as difficult as managing the educational life of a child, someone's child. And I cannot imagine the pressures that you and the other board members, my wife is a school teacher, 24 years this year. In fact, it's her last year.
Oh, wow.
And I cannot imagine the pressures you guys endure from parents that know and parents that don't know. And I think I could manage the parents that know better than those that don't know, because a lot of it is just emotions. And I read it in the stories as I was sitting here preparing to talk to you today. I'm reading emotion. And then I thought, you know what? I don't want any of that. I just want facts. So if there are any kind of high points that you've had as a board member, because you've been doing this now since 2022, so you've already had some moments, good and bad, and so you are not even up for re-election until 2025.
That's correct. So some of the best things that I think running for the school board, and I'm actually still on the HOA where I'm at, was on the mud before I got on the school board. And the school board, the thing that I appreciate the most about being on the school board is getting to take a deeper look and touching the lives of so many families, not just the students, but the staff. I remember in 2019, I went to Austin to advocate for teachers' raises, which was the last time I think they increased the funding for public education. So going out there and working with the team, working with the community, and trying to positively affect change. And sometimes it doesn't always work out the way that you want, and sometimes there's politics, and that's one of the things that I don't like about being on the school board. And you never really think about it when you're talking about schools, is the politics of it. I'm a very non-controversial, I would like to think, person. I like to keep it that way. I like to keep the politics out of the boardroom as much as we can, because we really just try to focus on the kids. But getting to do career days, I get asked to do career days pretty regularly. I get to go to all these great events. The 30th year anniversary for some of the schools, and some of the schools that are just now opening. And then Crawford just had the Coast Guard ROTC program is going to start up over there. I went to Marshall High School. This is a Marshall High School T-shirt, so I'm representing Marshall High School.
I love it.
The state regional finals. They lost by 2 points, and I blame the refs, because that was an amazing game. Amazing game by both teams. They played at the Berry Center. So there's so much diversity, and there's so many different schools, and the perks that we get, like the access to the games and access to the events, and going to celebrate all of the success that the kids are out there doing, from fine arts to band. Band night is amazing. Each and every year, all the bands come and just strut
Isn't
their
that
stuff.
cool?
Yeah, it's just so cool.
So, you use the word diverse, diversity a moment ago. You guys, I don't think you could be much more diverse. I'm looking at your numbers in your demographics, and this is from, I guess it's from one of your your school district pages. It says a breakdown is African American is 27%, Asian or Pacific Islander is 26.5%. Hispanic is 26.5 and white is 16. I'm blown away at how equal those numbers are.
Yeah, that's astounding. Is that I think you can go back maybe 10 years. It was probably
Right.
flipped. Folks want to come to Fort Bend, but not just from moving from out. Typically, a lot of the growth comes from inner city moves out, but there's folks coming from all over the world moving into this area. So
Sure.
that's a perfect example of it right there.
So, everyone thinks that, because in a lot of these articles I read Sugarland this, Sugarland that. Well, you guys are much larger than Sugarland. I want people to understand Sugarland is 45 square miles. Your school district's 170 square miles. I need people to understand, yes, Sugarland, the city, is part of Fort Bend ISD, but it's much larger than that, and I think that's cool. So you've given us some ups. Do you have a down moment, something that maybe have affected you differently than you had anticipated? I've had other folks come in here that represent the community, and strangely, they are affected differently, like their skin's thicker or thinner than others. And has something been bothersome to you, some experience that you would want to share? You don't have to.
There's probably been more than a handful. When we first got on the board, they would send us daily emails. Like these incidents happen on these campuses, and there's 80-something campuses, so a lot of times it's what gets reported. It doesn't
Right.
always make it back to us. But then I remember the first year that I was on the board getting emails about students passing away in either an accidents or cancer or whatever, and then staff members and things like that. You don't really. And it affects you differently.
Sure.
And you don't really expect those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a fight. Oh, there was, some controversial thing at a school or a protest at another school. But then you get some of these other emails and you're just like, wow, life, and I've attended a funeral for a little third grader.
Wow.
I think she was a third grader. And that was probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. Yeah, I mean, I didn't have to go, but I was like, I couldn't see myself from, But yeah, that was one of the hardest things. And
wow, so you just identified a very large 80,000 member family, and it's probably best way I can explain is our city staff is 900-ish. Your staff alone is 11,000.
Yeah, we're the largest employer.
Yeah, your family of children is 80,000. So I cannot imagine being a part of a family that large and the impact daily. Thanks for sharing that, because sometimes people don't want to be personal. But what I've learned is the people that are watching may not know Rick Garcia this way. They may think you're just some big tough guy, and a tough, quiet guy that they've never been able to get close to.
Well, we had some challenges at the end of last year, December, and we still have some challenges. And I've told folks that they email me, and I always I like to call them, I like to meet them. Folks are more than welcome to reach out. My email address is on the website. I do my best to get back to, and sometimes we get a lot of emails, and I do occasionally miss an email here or there, but I do want to reach out to folks. I do want to talk to folks. I don't post a lot on Facebook. My wife gives me a hard time because I'm bad about taking pictures and posting and just so. But I think at the end of the day, whatever we're doing as a school board and as a community, and the information that people want to know that they may feel like they're not getting, that's kind of where they just pick up the phone and they call me or they email me and say that's. And then at the end of the day, it's not our information; it's the public's and this community's information. And so, as hard as it is to say it, is another thing to say it and do it. So the transparency is always huge. A lot of folks don't necessarily see that you're being transparent, even though you're trying to. But at the end of the day, I think having conversations and trying to talk to people and trying to reach the community directly is just the best way to do it.
So I'm going to challenge you because you just said something that I think I need to challenge you on. Here's your challenge. You have, and I do, you and I both have an unfair advantage when it comes to access and relationships, things like that. So within the school district, there are things that you're going to get to see and people you're going to get to meet that our community will never have the opportunity. And if it's appropriate, here's my challenge. Share that story. Take a picture with you and your new superintendent, shaking hands, whatever, and share something about Mark. And I'll tell you why. The community doesn't know him and may not know you, especially if you're quiet. Now, I'm picking on my mayor for a minute. Joe, you know I love you, okay? Mayor Joe Zimmerman. He is private the way you described. But when you're one-on-one with him, he's talking about everybody, right? Yeah. And I'm like, well, Mayor, you never say that, to where people know. But it's the way he leads. And so my challenge to you, while you are in the position you are, share with the community what I call your unfair advantage. And I think it's a beautiful thing because you and I both know you could make a phone call to someone right now, and I'm not saying you could get to Superintendent Miles at HISD easily, but probably easier than me. Mm-hmm. That's an unfair advantage. But what if Miles says something or smiles in such a way that you could capture in a picture and share with the community? They would probably love that. I'm just giving an example. And so that's my challenge to you to do that.
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe not like John Welch does it. I think sometimes he shares to stir. His is more a share to stir. John, that was for you, buddy. Hey, so if you're trying to get in touch with Rick Garcia and you don't know how to find him, his email is rick, R-I-C-K, .Garcia at FortBendISD.com, rick.Garcia at FortBendISD.com. Rick, I will tell you, I've talked to a lot of people about you. You probably don't know that. I've been stalking you from a distance. And people all say the same thing about you. You're just a gentleman. You're a gentleman leader.
Try to be.
I sure appreciate what you're doing for Fort Bend ISD. Is there anything? I'm going to flip the camera over to you. This is your camera. You can say anything you want kind to the folks that are watching right now, maybe an invitation to reach out to you or whatever you want to tell them.
So what I would say is we got your back. We're here for the community. I'm here for all of Fort Bend ISD. I know that I live on the west side of the district, and it sometimes is a challenge to get onto the east side of the district. I do rely on my colleagues that are on that side to let me know what's going on. We've got a team that helps keep us informed on what's going on in all parts of the district. So there's a lot of really, really good things going on out there. Everything from athletics to sports. We just sort of wrapping up basketball, so now we're into baseball and soccer. Fine arts. They just had a whole series of their productions from this fall. A lot of really good things. I'm very excited to see what Dr. Smith is going to do and what the team's going to do to get us into, I call the next generation, the next phase of Fort Bend. I know that the Sugar Land in general is going through a lot of changes. We want to be right there partnering with our city, with Missouri City, with Sugar Land, with Richmond, and all our surrounding cities to make sure that our communities are strong and thriving, and we have really good, solid schools. We've got some school rebuilds that are coming up, so those are going to transform those communities, and I think that's sort of the message that we want to convey is how can we do that and be in the best interest of the entire community. And it's hard. It's everything that you do, there's always a component of folks that don't agree with it, but that's sort of the challenge in it, and that's also the fun part is how can we work together to come up with something that's in the best interest for everybody. So,
well, I'm not going to put you on the spot here, but one of the things I do want to talk about one day, whenever it's convenient and you're prepared, I want to know how school vouchers could affect our school district, our public schools. You don't have to get into that now, unless it's just something that you love talking about. But
I have time.
Yeah, I mean, we can make the time. The key thing is this school voucher issue that Governor Abbott's pushing. I don't, even though I think I know more than some, I don't really understand how that affects our current public school system in a positive or a negative. Unless you want to, you do not have to get into that.
Well, the challenge and the fear is that when you take money from public education and say we pass one of the duties of a school board member is to pass a budget. And when we get our projections from the demographer and says we're going to have 80,000 kids, and then we budget and we plan for 80,000 kids, we hire staff, we bring in the resources, we pay for resources, and then we maybe have a new voucher program that comes in, and we're going to give you $10,000 per kid to take your kids somewhere else. And so we maybe lose 1,000 of those. So for every $10,000 that, and so the concern is, are you going to take the money from us, or are you just going to give them $10,000? Because we've just paid for all these things, and now we're losing. And while I do agree that choice is very critical, and we try to offer a lot of programs of choice and opportunities here, and sometimes we don't have what everybody else has, but a lot of times we have a lot more than what other schools do. So the problem with what I've noticed with vouchers, and the reason why that, because they talked about giving teachers across the state raises, is they didn't do that because it seemed like they were holding the raises hostage for the vouchers. So if you didn't vote for the vouchers, then we can't increase the basic allotment for students, which our budget is based on attendance and enrollment.
Sure.
So not only how many kids, but also how much they go to school.
Sure.
Which is, should school districts be held accountable for kids going to school, or should that be more on the parent? Or so who? And there was a lot of discussions about, well, it shouldn't be based on just attendance, because then we lose a significant amount of millions of dollars, because we're about 90. We're still 95% attendance rate, which is still pretty good. I was at a conference over the weekend, and there was a school district. They were like 83%.
Jeez.
And that's pretty bad.
Yeah.
So we plan for like 96, but we're kind of in that 95, 96 range. So there's a little bit of component of loss in there.
Right.
So, but a lot of the way that we get measured on funding, charter schools and private schools obviously don't, because they're a private school. But charter schools, they're not held sort of by the same standards, and I think that's the problem. And if it's on a level playing field, we don't have a problem, And I think the problem is you put a charter school next to an A-rated school. That's kind of a problem, because it's a really thriving school. Now, if we've got some challenges in certain areas,
sure,
it's competition. We're not meeting the bill. People want to take their child out of a lower performing school. I mean, and there's a good argument for, we need to do better educating our kids, or we need to do better at so there is that back and forth that I wouldn't call it controversy, but those are the questions that are being asked on both sides. So at the end of the day, I think if you feel like public education is broken, it doesn't make a lot of sense that we're creating another broken system. I think we need to really focus on making sure that what we have is solid, and we're working together with the state, with our state legislators, and making sure they understand kind of what our challenges are. And so I think that's also one of the things that I'm looking forward to with Dr. Smith, is we've had some challenges in the past with local elected leaders kind of not really understanding where we are, what our challenges are, and even some coming out and against some of our previous elections, which I don't blame them, And so I've talked to a lot of folks, and they'll talk to legislators up in Dallas on their side of town. They say, "Well, we just gave you a whole bunch of money," but that they don't really know what they voted on. So it's really our job to help educate our legislators just as much as they're trying to educate us on what they're trying to do. So it's at the end of the day, it's a team effort on both sides. So that in of itself is
sure.
It's a challenge, but it's also it's a good challenge. So
well, I got to tell you, I'm so glad you gave me that bit of information, because I had no idea how you process that. I read about it all the time, and look, here's what I've learned since I've been in position in city council. I stay on my rail. Okay, my rail is police, fire, public works, animal services, and mobility. I'm going to go with those 5, right? My rail is not education. My rail, there's a lot of things, it's not my business, okay? So that's why I don't ever get into it. And that's why I appreciate what you just said. So, guys, I hope you've enjoyed as much as I have getting to know Rick Garcia. I've known him a little more than that, but now I know him a lot more. So, Rick, I want you to just keep being successful for our school district. I look forward to whatever your plans are in 2025. Keep making a positive difference. I still don't know how school board members do it. I don't know how you get the motivation, but God bless you all.
Thank you.
And sooner or later, you can leave the HOA. You know that, right?
I know. I don't think they know that, though.
So God bless you, Rick. I would call that a wrap, and
Yes,
I'll
sir.
sign out like I always do. Howdy, Fort Bend, and we'll see you again. Bye, y'all.
Awesome.
1 second, and we will be off.